COVID, the Black Lives Matter riots, the 2020 election. We will discuss all of it. Plus, we'll get his thoughts on the unprecedented leak from the Supreme Court and the current Department of Justice's January 6th investigations and arrests. In this episode, Attorney General Barr joins to break down the difference between actual crimes and the media's constant hysteria. Hey, and welcome. This is the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special. This show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Protect your online privacy today at expressvpn.com/Ben. Just a reminder, we'll be doing some bonus questions at the end with the Attorney General. The only way to get access to that part of the conversation is to become a member. Head on over to dailywire.com, become a member. You'll have access to all of the full conversations with every one of our awesome guests. Attorney General Barr, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here, Ben. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we begin sort of with the role of the DOJ in general. So you served as Attorney General twice. You did it in the H.W. Bush administration and, of course, under Donald Trump. And there seems to be sort of widespread misperception about what the Attorney General does. On the one hand, the Attorney General is expected by whoever the president's supporters are to be the wingman for the president. On the other hand, the Attorney General is expected to be some sort of independent agent who is just there to establish justice on his own. What is the actual law with regard to what your role was as Attorney General?
Well, there are basically three functions. One is a policy advisor on the justice system, including criminal justice. And there you're a political appointee providing advice as to the president's political program, his policy program. The other is providing legal advice to the president and the executive branch. And you do that again as a presidential subordinate who's providing advice from the standpoint of someone who's in sympathy with the administration's program. And you try to help the administration attain its objectives within the law. And then the third role is administering the criminal justice system, the chief prosecutor, essentially. And there you are subordinate to the president. But attorneys general generally believe and should attempt to administer the criminal justice system without regard to partisan feelings and apply one standard of justice for everybody. That's what the rule of law is all about. Now, that doesn't mean the president can't say, I'd like you to pursue, these kinds of crimes aggressively, or, I just saw something on television that bothers me. Someone was beaten up. Are you looking into that? That's fine. But if the president starts intervening and directing that certain people be prosecuted, regardless of what the attorney general thinks the evidence is and the law is, then that would generally be considered an abuse. And I wouldn't do it. And I don't think most attorneys general should or would.
Why don't we go back to when you were first asked by President Trump to become Attorney General? So immediately preceding that, he'd had Jeff Sessions as his Attorney General. He had moved sort of along a broad spectrum of feelings about Jeff Sessions. Sessions was one of his earliest supporters, obviously, when he was senator from Alabama. And then when Sessions recused himself during the Russiagate investigation, this angered President Trump. Why don't we start from your perspective as somebody who actually served as Attorney General on whether it was right for Jeff Sessions to recuse himself in the Russia investigation in the first place, which sort of led to this chain of events?
I think that he was right in recusing himself from parts of it, but I think he had a very sweeping general recusal that probably went too far.
So when it comes to, so President Trump basically became very angry with Sessions for doing this, and eventually Sessions left, and then you get the call that the president wants you to become the Attorney General. What are your thoughts when you get that call?
Well, I was very reluctant to do it. I was in a very good place where I wanted to be entering retirement, and my family was not keen on the idea. I was under no illusions about Trump's personality and the way he treated lawyers. All my business, I had never met him, but all my business friends in New York who had worked with him said that I should stay away. But I wasn't going in to be the buddy of the president. I felt that we were headed toward a potential constitutional crisis. I was skeptical of the Russiagate matter, and I thought that could be essentially being used as a weapon to hobble the administration and drive the president from office. And so I thought there was a potential crisis coming up. Also, the Department of Justice and the FBI were being buffeted, under attack from both sides. And I felt someone had to go in there and steady the ship, and I tried to propose other people, but no one else got traction. And eventually, I decided that if the president asked me, I really had to do it. And it's sort of summed up in the advice some of my colleagues from the Bush administration gave me, which is, look, the country's facing some challenges, and what's important for the country is that somebody have these jobs and know what they're doing. And so I said that I would accept it if offered, and he did offer me the job.
So why don't we talk about Russiagate, because obviously that played a major role in your decision to take the job in the first place. So Russiagate, obviously originated in 2015, 2016, with all these allegations that the president of the United States, at that point just a candidate, was colluding with the Russians in order to skew the outcome of the election. This led to a series of abuses, including FISA warrants against Carter Page that were, it appears, entirely unsubstantiated. It led to the release via a very sort of jerry-rigged process of the completely unsubstantiated so far Steele dossier, which turns out to now be basically just a bunch of garbage rumor mongering that was trafficked in Washington, D.C., and then eventually laundered into the FBI. What was your perspective on Russiagate from the outset, and sort of how did it evolve, and then how did you treat that as Attorney General?
So when it first came up, I was skeptical of it because from my experience, I didn't think the Russians would need to collude with anyone or want to collude with anyone in the United States in order to carry out a hack and dump operation, which is essentially what it was, stealing emails and dumping them into the public forum. And, the more I found out about it, the more I became skeptical of it. I looked at the dossier when it first came out, and to me it was a joke. And I think a number of professional intelligence people over at the agency, the CIA, just felt it was garbage. So I always felt it hard to explain why the FBI was following up the way they did on it, both before the election, but particularly after the election, when they started finding out what a piece of rubbish it was. They seemed to double down.
And I want to, in just one second, get to sort of the release of the Steele dossier, which seems pretty suspicious in terms of how that was actually released. First, you're probably overpaying for your home and auto insurance. You just are. I mean, you're paying too much because you did it through word of mouth, didn't you? Didn't you? Well, with home and auto insurance rates on the rise industry-wide, now is the time to make sure you are not overpaying for your coverage. Policy Genius is your one-stop shop to find the insurance you need. Just head on over to policygenius.com, answer a few questions.